He was born into wealth, shaped by war and driven by faith. But somewhere between devotion and destruction, Osama bin Laden became the most wanted man on earth. He was a ghost who spoke through fire. A name whispered in fear before every war, seen by none, yet felt by millions. Before the smoke rose, before the towers fell, one man had already written the world's darkest script. They searched deserts, mountains and cities, every shadow, every heartbeat. But for 10 long years, he stayed one step ahead. Until the night, the world held its breath. This is the story of the man the world couldn't stop, and the hunt that changed history forever. Before the world knew his name, before he became a symbol of fear and vengeance, there was only a quiet boy in the red sands of Arabia. The Bin Laden family, builders of royal palaces and mosques, stood at the heart of Saudi Arabia's transformation. And from that family, the 17th of more than 50 children, was born Osama bin Muhammad bin Awad bin Laden. He grew up not in poverty but in privilege, educated, quiet, almost shy. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, was a man revered for his construction empire and loyalty to the Saudi royal family. But Osama's world would shift early. In 1967, his father's helicopter crashed in the desert. Osama was just 10. For a boy raised in the shadow of empire and faith, loss can carve deep questions. Who guides us now? What does God ask of us? At school he was reserved, devout, drawn to the strict moral codes of Wahhabi Islam. Teachers recalled his discipline, classmates his silence. He wasn't the type you'd imagine leading men into war. But history often hides its turning points in quiet souls. The Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan. For millions of Muslims worldwide, it was seen as a holy invasion, a call to arms. When the call for jihad echoed through the mosques of the Middle East, one young Saudi millionaire answered. Osama, in his early 20s, left his comfortable life. He used his inheritance and family connections to fund resistance fighters, the Mujahideen. He wasn't a warrior yet, not then. He was a financier and organizer, building camps, roads and tunnels. But on those mountains something was forming, a belief that faith alone could defy empires. American intelligence at the time supported the Mujahideen, unaware that the same networks of fighters forged in the Afghan war would later become the roots of Al-Qaeda. It was in those cold Afghan caves that the myth of Bin Laden began. A man who believed he'd seen superpowers fall and thought another could be next. By the late 1980s, the Soviets had withdrawn. Osama returned home to Saudi Arabia, hailed quietly among radicals as a hero of faith. But when US troops were invited into the kingdom during the Gulf War, something inside him broke. He saw foreign boots on holy ground, the land of Mecca and Medina. To him it wasn't protection. It was desecration. That anger, fused with ideology, birthed the foundations of Al-Qaeda. History would remember him as a terrorist, but before the terror came the conviction. Before the global manhunt came the belief that one man could challenge the world. And in the years ahead, that belief would set the world on fire. Exile is a strange teacher. It strips away comfort, leaving only conviction and vision. Osama bin Laden had left Saudi Arabia. His outspoken criticism of the royal family for allowing American soldiers onto holy soil had turned admiration into exile. In Sudan he found a new home, and a stage to build something larger than rebellion. Khartoum was a crossroads, of traitors, preachers and men with quiet, dangerous ambitions. There, among the desert compounds, Bin Laden began laying the groundwork for a network unlike any seen before. He invested in farms, construction and charities, all legitimate on the surface. But beneath those fronts, money, men and weapons began to flow, linking Yemen, Somalia, Egypt, Afghanistan. He called it Al-Qaeda, the base. Not a place but an idea. A web of loyalty bound by belief, not borders. The organization's creed was simple and terrifyingly clear. Muslim lands, he believed, were under occupation. The West, especially America, had become the enemy of Islam. To defend the faith, violence was not just allowed, it was sacred duty. And in the early 1990s, that belief found its first expression in blood. American forces arrived to stabilize Somalia's famine-stricken civil war. But what followed, the Black Hawk Down incident, would mark a turning point. Al-Qaeda-linked fighters helped local militias ambush U.S. soldiers, killing 18 Americans. It was It was Bin Laden's first taste of success against the West. He saw the images, American bodies dragged through Mogadishu streets, and whispered to his followers, "The giant bleeds." By 1996, under US and Saudi pressure, Sudan expelled him. He fled again, back to Afghanistan, a place he once helped liberate. Now it would become his fortress. There, in the mountains of Tora Bora, under the protection of the Taliban, Bin Laden found his stage. He trained thousands, young men drawn from every corner of the Muslim world. They came with poverty, anger, and purpose, and he gave them a mission: to strike at the enemy's heart. In February 1998, Osama bin Laden issued a declaration. To kill Americans and their allies, civilian or military, is an individual duty for every Muslim. It was no longer theory. it was war. That same year, truck bombs ripped through U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania, killing over 200 people. Then came the USS Cole bombing in Yemen, 17 sailors dead, dozens wounded. Each attack was surgical in symbolism, American presence abroad punished. Each one a signature of the network. But in his mountain refuge, Bin Laden's ambition was growing darker still. He no longer wanted to send a message. He wanted to make history. The network was no longer in the shadows. It was watching, waiting, rehearsing the day the world would wake to smoke, fire, and disbelief. That day was coming, and it would change everything. In the desert silence of Afghanistan, a radio crackles. Miles away, the world is about to change, and its architect sits in stillness. Osama bin Laden prayed at sunrise. Around him, a handful of followers prepared for a message they had rehearsed in whispers for years. The date was September 11, 2001. 4 months, 19 men had trained in the shadows of flight schools and safe houses. They called their mission the Plains Operation. Its code: Al-Amal al-Kabir. The Big Hope. A clear morning. The kind the city forgets to notice, until the sky itself is torn open. American Airlines Flight 11 slammed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later, United Flight 175 hit the South Tower. At 9:37, Flight 77 struck the Pentagon. At 10:03, Flight 93 crashed into a Pennsylvania field after passengers fought back. Fire, smoke, confusion. The Twin Towers, symbols of modern power, fell within 2 hours.
What came down? We crashed! The other trade center's down! It's down! It's down!
Tuesday morning. It's the 11th day of September, the year 2001. It is such a pretty morning, isn't it?
Perfect fall morning, although it's not fall yet. So.
Very, very sketchy details reaching us here at Sky Centre. Important enough to bring to you, though, at this early stage. We believe that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center in New York.
Right now we're getting information, Al, that it was a small commuter plane, and of course we'll let people know as soon as we have more information as to what actually caused this. And of course, on everybody's mind, who might have been hurt.
Just seen is about the most shocking videotape I've ever seen.
It is completely impossible to understand why this is happening and to figure out what in the world is going on.
We heard a big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere. People are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess because they're trying to save themselves. I don't know.
Blew up, a big explosion, people started running, it was just chaos everywhere. People jumping out, people just kept jumping and jumping and jumping.
Talk about it later. Thank you all.
And now you have to move from talk about a possible accident to talk about something deliberate.
Let's go to President Bush right now.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence.
Forgotten somewhat to remind people that there was the crash of another plane, a fourth plane outside Pittsburgh, about 80 miles from Pittsburgh, and we don't have video of that story at the moment. That's the fourth prong in this terrorist attack on U.S. soil.
We want to just repeat those airline numbers, which is, extremely upsetting news for people who had loved ones on these flights, but we want to give you that information. The 4 aircraft involved.
We described to you the possibility of that North Tower collapsing. About 5 minutes after we went off the air, it did collapse. Once again, we have no idea at this point the loss of life. I can only tell you there were hundreds of emergency workers down there, about 5 or 6 blocks. In the first few minutes, emergency workers were trying just basically to get out of there, to survive. You could see that written in their faces. The situation was so desperate, they just wanted to get out of there.
Today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts. The victims were in airplanes or in their offices, secretaries, businessmen and women, military and federal workers, moms and dads, friends and neighbors. Thousands of lives were suddenly ended by evil, despicable acts of terror. The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America.
Across oceans in the mountains of Tora Bora, a man watched the footage in silence. The world he'd imagined had arrived. Nearly 3,000 people were dead. America was wounded, furious, and united in grief. The name Osama Bin Laden became the center of that grief. Within weeks, U.S. forces invaded Afghanistan. The Taliban refused to surrender him. Caves became fortresses. Mountains became prisons. Bin Laden vanished into the labyrinth of Tora Bora, alive, unseen. Every drone hum, every whisper in the markets of Kabul carried his ghost. But the world had changed. Airports became fortresses. Wars began, first in Afghanistan, then Iraq. And in the midst of global upheaval, the image of one man became the symbol of evil itself. For nearly a decade he remained hidden. Sometimes near the border of Pakistan, sometimes moving under night skies, sometimes sending out videos, thin, almost spectral, declaring war against a world that had already moved on. He no longer roamed caves. Now he lived behind walls. In a quiet Pakistani city, Bin Laden settled with his wives and children in a walled compound. No phone lines, no internet, just couriers and silence. He wrote letters, read news clippings, and watched himself fade from relevance even as he plotted again. But intelligence had begun to circle closer. A single courier, tracked over years, led the CIA to that compound. And on a moonless night, the world's most secret manhunt reached its end. 10 years after fire fell on New York, helicopters cut through Pakistani skies. In 40 minutes, the story that began in the deserts of Arabia would end in a darkened room. But the echoes of faith, fury, and fear would last far longer than the man himself. For years he was a rumor, a shadow people claimed to glimpse in the folds of mountains. But on this night, the rumor had an address. The compound stood quiet behind high cement walls. No telephone wires, no internet, a life deliberately unplugged. Inside, Osama Bin Laden, 54, prayed, read the Quran, and spoke softly with his youngest wife. Outside, 2 Black Hawk helicopters cut through the darkness. Black paint, silent blades, American pilots flying low across the Pakistani border. At 1:10 a.m., the first helicopter hovered above the courtyard. Failed, too much heat, too little lift, and the craft crashed inside the walls. But the team moved fast. U.S. Navy SEAL Team 6 poured out, breaching doors, clearing rooms, calling codes and whispers. They weren't hunting a ghost anymore. They were inside the house where history hid. Within minutes, they reached the upper floor. A man emerged from the doorway, unarmed but unmistakable. Tall, thin, with the same sharp features burned into the memories of a generation. 2 shots fired. Osama Bin Laden fell in the darkness of his bedroom. Half a world away, a room held its breath. President Barack Obama, Vice President Joe Biden, Secretary Hillary Clinton, and a small circle of advisors watched the live feed in silence. No sound reached them. Just shifting images, coded messages, the faces of men moving through night. When confirmation came, Geronimo Ike, enemy killed in action. The tension broke. A decade-long pursuit was over. The body was identified through DNA. By dawn, it was gone, buried at sea from the deck of the USS Carl Vinson, according to Islamic rites. There would be no shrine, no grave to rally around, only the sea, endless and anonymous. In death, he vanished the way he had lived, somewhere between myth and memory. Crowds gathered in New York, Washington, London, singing, crying, waving flags. For many, justice had come. But for others, especially across the Muslim world, the moment carried confusion. Relief, yes, but also the reminder of wars still burning in Afghanistan and Iraq, of drones and fear and displacement. Killing the man did not end the idea. You can strike a heart, but not always a conviction. The years that followed saw Al-Qaeda fragment. New groups rose: ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram. Each born from the chaos his legacy helped ignite. The world entered an age of surveillance, security checkpoints, and suspicion. For children who grew up after September 11th, his name became a symbol, not a person. A word whispered in classrooms, a face on a wanted poster, an image frozen in time. He began as a son of privilege, became a warrior of faith, and ended as a fugitive who changed the course of the century. The story of Osama bin Laden is not just one of terror, but of belief, betrayal, and the cost of conviction. The camera pans upward from the waves of the Arabian Sea, dissolving into the night sky. The voice fades, leaving only the wind. Empires rise, beliefs harden, men fall, but history remembers. the man was gone, but the world he reshaped was only beginning to reveal itself. The decade after his death was defined not by silence, but by adaptation. Airports became fortresses of scanning gates and anxious glances. Governments built vast networks of surveillance, digital webs mapping the movements of billions. Wars spread in the name of security, while entire regions were redrawn by fear, ideology, and ambition. From Baghdad to Boston, from the mountains of Waziristan to the streets of London, his shadow lingered in the metal detectors, the headlines, the quiet policies made behind closed doors. When one man's violence shakes the world learns to live differently, even if it does not know how to live better. Children born after 2001 grew up beneath the image of two falling towers. For them, Bin Laden was never a person. He was a symbol stitched into lessons, films, and airport lines. Teachers spoke of that morning in whispers. Parents paused before answering questions about why it happened. A generation learned that safety was fragile, and that fate, when twisted, could wound the world. In the silence he left, a new kind of war began, one fought in code, data, and ideology. Extremism found new homes online. Laptops replaced training camps. Propaganda traveled faster than bullets. Governments responded with drones that hovered unseen, algorithms that profiled and predicted. The legacy of Bin Laden was not only in the ashes of buildings, but in the invisible architecture of a surveillance age. New York rebuilt its skyline. The Pentagon was repaired. Families carried photographs into memorial lights every September. And yet the scars remained, quiet, enduring, private. For every headline of vengeance, there were quieter stories of mercy. First responders who kept going back. Children who grew up to build rather than destroy. History will remember Osama bin Laden as a man who believed the world could be remade through terror. But the truer story is what the world became in response. Laws rewritten, borders redrawn, trust reshaped. The screen fades to a slow aerial of lower Manhattan, reflecting pools glimmering where the towers once stood. Names carved in bronze catch the morning light. The narrator's voice softens. Time moves on, but echoes remain. From the deserts of Arabia to the towers of New York, from a single ideology to a century learning to guard its peace, this is the legacy of a man who tried to break the world, and the world that refused to stay broken.